afternoon, evening, everyone. It's a really lovely atmosphere tonight, being that we're presenting about purposeful pedagogy in IB mathematics. Obviously, the IB means we can talk to a global audience, which is really exciting. I'm based in Sydney, but tonight you'll also be hearing from Laila Nabil in Azerbaijan and Erin Gallagher, our head of education, who's in the Sunshine Coast in Australia as well. So I'd like to just start off sharing the Mathspace mission, which is that we believe that every student can excel at mathematics with the right help at the right time, and we want to be that right help at the right time for every student. And I put this in because I think it really aligns nicely with the IB philosophy that students are taught to think for themselves and to drive the learning process. It's this student-centered focus on equipping students to develop their own understanding that really excites me about the IB and why I think Mathspace is such a useful tool to support your learners. Now, I am aware that before I hand over to Laila to discuss her experiences using Mathspace and incorporating that into her IB teaching so far, I'd just like to give you a quick overview of the Mathspace platform, just because there are a few terms that are a little bit specific that you may hear, just to give you a little bit more context. And I know there's quite a few people here who haven't seen it before. So I'll start with the research underpinning our approach. In 1984, Benjamin Bloom authored a seminal paper called the Two Sigma Problem. And basically, it was the search for group instruction methods that were as effective as one-to-one tutoring. Bloom found that students who received one-to-one tutoring performed on average 2 standard deviations above the average control class. And he believed it was largely due to this constant feedback and corrective process, which is why students were so successful. So it's this idea that underpins our approach to Mathspace, and we strive to replicate that one-to-one tutoring experience to support effective teaching and learning. So what this means is within the platform is that we encourage students to enter full lines of working and they get immediate feedback on that step. If they get stuck, they can use the many help options we have, for example, watching a video, reading through a worked example, or using our chat with Milo AI to get really targeted help that addresses these misconceptions. We always give students the opportunity to reflect and correct their own working until they get to the final answer. And even if they are incorrect, Milo AI is learning to understand these misconceptions and provide advice to help get them back on track. So it's always as targeted to the student as possible. We don't just focus on right or wrong answers. We try to understand student thinking and promote good mathematical habits as well. So you can see in this image here that we provide these auto hints about correct mathematical notation. And we've seen a significant improvement in subsequent student answers with these kinds of tips. So we're always monitoring to make sure we're encouraging those habits. So individual students are getting this level of support on each question, but what's really powerful is that each question they attempt directly impacts the next question that gets presented to them. So we use this AI technology to understand a student's total knowledge state as they're answering those questions. So we map all the curriculum outcomes into a knowledge graph with those prerequisite skills determining what we'll present next and what students will work on next. And we use this to report on growth in outcomes and to inform what tasks we recommend to students who are looking for that independent practice. So they can always experience that level of success. So looking at this and empowering teachers like yourselves, firstly, it means that teachers can monitor student progress through content and quickly identify when students are struggling and need your assistance. Obviously, that is one of the benefits of digital technology, is that ability to monitor. We also provide teachers with actionable insights on their classes to maximise learning opportunities in class time. So again, you can really quickly identify where your students need help, so you can be more targeted in your teaching there. And this means that we can effectively track student progress against every curriculum outcome and identify gaps in student learning. So this is the sort of reporting level that you'll see in Mathspace. Now, just with that short overview of Mathspace, I'd like to introduce Laila Nabil from the International School of Azerbaijan, who's been using Mathspace recently and trialing it there. And I'd like her to share her experiences with you. So I will just allow her to do that now. Can you see your slides yet, Laila, or do I need to change windows?
Yeah, thank you so much, Erin. And yeah, you can present from your end. And yeah, good afternoon from Baku to everyone joining us today. And it's a pleasure to be here with the Global Educators community. Thank you for the opportunity, Erin and Zach. And it is a pleasure really to talk about our math department experience with Mathspace and the journey we had over the past few months. So I'm Laila Nabil, the math learning leader at the International School of Azerbaijan in Baku. And today I will share with you the math department recent experience using Mathspace platform in teaching and learning with our students as I go through the teacher and students feedback. Can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. All right. So I will start by giving a little bit of a context of how the math department started thinking about using this platform. We started using the free trial. We found that the textbooks big time aligned with the IB framework, the MYP and DP. So it was interesting to see like how the lessons are panned out and already planned with the resources and everything that we need to see, and that was only on the free basis or the free trial version. We had the privilege of trying the premium features over the course of 8 weeks. I think Mathspace was generous enough to provide us with this offer where we found that many features helped us and our students improve the teaching and learning, add more quality, and at the same time meet the school-wide strategic plan of providing high-quality teaching and learning. Our biggest challenge as teachers were to strike the balance between delivering the content with rigor, structure, and efficiency, and at the same time cater to different learning styles and abilities within our classrooms. The teachers found themselves spending hours stitching resources together, grading, analyzing data to inform our teaching practice. So that was very time consuming and demanding for the teachers to try to be able to do all of that through many resources or different multiple resources that we have been using. So the department experience with Mathspace will be shared through candid feedback from my team and our students on how we have moved towards a more unified ecosystem using Mathspace premium features. So let's dive in. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay. So as you see here, that's a survey that was sent to the teachers that was mainly focusing on specific areas. I'm sorry, can we go to the previous slide where the teachers shared some quotes? So yeah, I'm quoting their words here. Teachers were happy on different levels with different things. So I try to sum it up here. So they use Mathspace regularly for their planning, and that saves them a lot of time, a lot of teaching time and grading and analyzing the data. As Erin mentioned earlier about seeing the reports and how easy we can see the breakdown of the data and how we can target specific students in their learning and in their learning journey. It's also fun, and that's per the student feedback. They enjoyed some of the features, making the learning environment much more interactive and fun with collaboration and healthy competition, but at the same time focusing on the mathematical understanding Another teacher stated that the step-by-step feedback given to the students really helped them grow their critical thinking and reasoning and problem-solving strategies. And that was one of the biggest areas that we found challenging previously. So yeah, that was taken from teachers' feedback. Can we go to the next slide? As we see here, the survey focused on some of the key areas that the teacher identified previously as areas of concern in terms of planning time, quality, and efficiency. And as you see here, for teachers, time is the biggest challenge. So the questions in the survey focused on the ease of lesson planning or having the lessons already planned in alignment with the MYP and DP, with the resources ready. So teachers really didn't have to put so much time and effort and thinking into it. The student independence, the step-by-step feedback value through the exercises and adaptive practice that caters to the different learning styles in our classrooms. The efficiency in marking time, the auto-graded task that gives you immediate results that you can see real time while you are with the students in the class, and you can jump in to help those who need support. And of course, above all, it's the IB, MYP and DP alignment, and we went through the textbooks provided. They have, I would say, they align with the framework of the MYP, one of the best resources that I have seen in this area in terms of the alignment with the IB framework. Can we go to the next slide, please? So analyzing the data. As a mathematician, we are obsessed with the data and analyzing the data and reading the insights and data themes. We saw that one of the main themes, we have three main themes out of the data, and one of them is the real-time intervention, as I mentioned previously, that while you are with the students in class, while they're doing the practice, you can recognize that which students need to focus on the background knowledge, the basic skills before moving into the content that they're currently doing in class, versus those who are exceeding the curriculum expectation and can take an extension. So this feature of adaptive practice, I felt that it caters so much to the different diverse learning styles in the learning environment. The ability to check the students' lines of working and reasoning, which aligns with the IB requirements. And we see that as teachers who are teaching MYP and DP at the same time. And the takeaway from that, as discussed with the teachers, was that we identified exactly where the students' logic fall behind, where we can actually pick on that, and that informed our teaching practice. The other part would be, if you can click on the slide, please, Erin. Thank you. Teachers transitioning from being graders to facilitators. So it's not regarded anymore as grading is not regarded as a burden, but rather a data source that gives more insights about the students, where they are in their learning journey, how can we differentiate, how can we cater to the different learning styles. The feature of having the tasks auto-graded saved a lot of time for the teachers, and that was agreed on 100% of our teachers, and that showed how the teachers can focus on specific aspects that the students need to develop, especially when it came to the subjective criteria like B, C, and D. And then last would be the IB learner profile and approaches to learning, where we saw this gap previously between what the students need to be prepared for, especially for a rigorous program like the diploma program, and how we can work and focus more on developing these skills along the way. So we saw that it has been obvious that the students are taking initiative in approaching more challenging questions and not afraid of just getting a wrong tick at the end, because they're getting constructive feedback. They know where things went wrong and how to fix them and how to do them the right way. Also, they have been reflective, as we heard from the students discussing, like we used to know it like that, but now we know how to do it the right way. So that always give the students some ownership of their work and develop the self-management skills that we are looking for into the IB students. And that's developed throughout the MYP years before getting into the last 2 years of the program. Can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. Some of the challenges that the student mentioned initially were that they were I will use the word forced to show their working lines or their steps. And that was our struggle as teachers with them as well, especially those who have like this higher order thinking skills, and they just don't see the value of putting their work in a written form or showing their steps. We always get that from our students, but I know the answer. Why should I show the steps? And then no matter how we try to tell them that that will be an issue when you get to the DP and you sit for the DP exams, because you're being graded for each step and you're taking partial credit if things go wrong. That didn't really kick in up until we started to use this tool that showed them the value of showing the lines of reasoning and the steps of working. The teachers would like to see more of that in Mathspace. Some more tasks that focus on targeting criteria, the investigation, especially the investigation, and how the students can figure out the pattern through a task, and then communication, which is focuses on communicating the mathematical reasoning and then applying that into real life context. So that was one of the main things that we discussed as something that we would like to see in Mathspace in the future. Now moving to the students' feedback. So this is what some of our students said about Mathspace. They enjoyed it. They enjoy the variety of questions. It gives the ease of use for the platform, how they can access the assigned tasks, their daily lessons, the resources in the lessons, how it gives them a variety of modes, like giving them, for those who like to work on a paper, they give them the worksheet, the physical worksheet, and how for those who like the interactive part, how they can do that in the interactive practice. They enjoyed some of the other features like the AI tool help, the Milo AI, and collecting the coins and all of that. For them, it felt much more engaging, fun, and interactive. Analyzing the students' data, we asked them about which resources they found more helpful in learning new concepts, and Mathspace came at the top, as you can see, compared to other digital resources we're using, physical textbooks, lesson slides. So the students chose Mathspace as their top resource. The next question was, absolutely. Yeah, sure. Okay, so the next question, can we move to the next slide? The students also were asked in regards to how breaking down the steps helped them understand their mistakes better than just seeing the correct right or wrong at the end. And as you can see, many students agreed that that helped them understand the logic or the reason behind why did they get it wrong and the right way of doing it right or writing it in the right way. Especially, I would just bring up this example from a student who said that I have always been doing it like that and this student is in grade 10, means that he will be in DP next year. And this part that they mentioned is concerning the mathematical notation and how to write things in the right way. So they brought that up of like, I haven't come through that before, learning how to do it in the right way up until I'm now in grade 10. So that was very actually insightful for the teachers and eye-opening of like how we need to focus on the little things that we know that they might come across and not notice that it's mandatory. The next question was just a general breakdown for the data, the ease of navigation for the platform. And I heard that from some of the parents who reached out to us on how it helped the students to review at home and how the platform is easy to use even for the parents. It was easy to navigate, to find the lessons. So even if the students need to go back to things that have been done before to review for a test or just to review in general, it was easy for both the students and the parents. And of course, some of them saw the value of it preparing for the IB and the IB exams, especially that we keep bringing that up in our practice and teaching, especially with higher grade levels, 9 and 10, heading into the DP. The next slide, please. Yeah, I think there are some clicks needed here. So the first data theme here would be that again and again, I think this themes keeps coming up for teachers as well as the students of the value of how the students are seeing the step-by-step guidance and mistakes analysis and knowing exactly where it went wrong. The students felt safe of doing mistakes and learning from them, getting instant feedback and just tracking their progress as they go. Of course, the AI tools provided was fun for the students, and this is what I find different than other digital resources because it keeps the students engaged. It keeps the students, I would say, entertained, which is not in a bad way. I had one of my students bringing up like the number of coins that they're collecting when they solve questions, stuff like that, that keeps the students motivated. So it's as if they're solving questions through a game, keeps them motivated, keeps their thinking going, and at the same time, they're not bored. The adaptive practice is an excellent tool. Again, it caters to all the most of the learning styles we have, especially the students who are needing like some differentiation in terms of language or learning support students who need some breakdown for the tasks. The last thing was the gamification and student engagement. Again, was brought up as the tug of wars. Those teachers who are using this mode, the students really enjoyed that. And the ability to compare with the students based on study habits and how they can meet the deadlines for the tasks. So we saw an increase in terms of like how the students are talking about how they prepare for an assessment using this resource. The last thing I would like to talk about in my position as a head of department and the person responsible for the department budget and evaluating the resources that we feel like it's worth investment. We saw Mathspace as one of the resources that we are very keen to. It ticks all the boxes for us. It will be a good investment in terms of saving time for the teachers, in terms of grading and getting the reports and gaining more insights from the data about the students, to the efficiency as it aligns to the MYP and DP and quality of learning as heard from the students. So for value for money, I would say we can make this decision confidently. So yeah, thank you so much. That was all from my side.
Thank you, Laila. There was a question here from Anne in the chat just saying, do you have an example of how you'd integrate Mathspace to support the learning in one of your lessons? So maybe give an example of the way that your teachers were doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the examples that comes to my mind is the differentiation tools. So I was really impressed because I have never come through learning digital tool that gives me the lesson provided and equipped with differentiation tools that caters to support students who need learning support and students who are language learners, and a breakdown of some activities and breakdown for the vocabulary in the lesson and how to explain it in deep details. Previously, we had to prepare all of that. We had to equip our lessons with all of that. We had to dig deeper into the lesson to make sure that the vocabulary is understood for all the different levels. We are in a very diverse student body community. So in order to cater for all these levels, we needed to provide our lessons with so many resources. The slides were not sufficient. We had to provide visual learners with videos. We had to provide those who are learning language learners with breakdown for the vocab or more understanding, especially for the command terms. With Mathspace, it comes with that and it makes our lesson planning much easier. So if you need an explicit example, it was recently in the one of the coordinate geometry lessons, unit lessons, and some of the students really found it hard to grasp the idea of the gradient or what does it mean. It seemed very broad for them. With some video tools that Mathspace provided and differentiation tools, it was easy for the students to see that and understand it and grasp it. It also provides some hands-on activities that gives you explicitly the tools that you need to use in your lessons. So the teachers just need to read all the instructions and be ready with that before the lesson. So I can bring that as an example of how I integrated that in my own lessons.
Awesome. Thank you, Laila. Now, I think one interesting point you did touch on was in terms of the criteria for maths. Most products, I think us maybe slightly better than other, hit that criteria A well. Sometimes C, we get feedback that it's okay. I can see a couple of other people who have joined who've provided that feedback too. But we're still lacking in that B and D area in particular, which is where we see a lot of IB teachers looking for resources as well. So with that, in saying that, I want to share now how we're approaching that. I'm going to hand over to Erin Gallagher, our Head of Education, to look at how we're making those higher order thinking skills more embedded in maths-based lessons as well to support that. And I hope that answers a few questions in the chat as well.
Hello, everybody. I loved listening to your recount there, Layla. It was so good. I've been working with Mathspace now for, I think, coming on to 14 years. And so, yeah, it's been that long since I was in a classroom. But that story is exactly why I do what I do. So I'm very excited to be able to share with you all how we're going to take the program that you've just explained so articulately and adding it and making it more IB. What we're going to do is talk a little bit about what I'm building now. So me and my team are building a whole suite of books for MYP and DP. So 9 books in total. I'll talk a little bit around the main differences between the product that you've sort of been articulating and how we're making it more IB. But if you've never seen us before, it will still make a lot of sense. I've got some examples to show as well. So I've got there that there's about 90 lessons, 90 worksheets per book. Just touch on that very briefly. We like to try and make sure that one section or one subtopic in our book, and I've got an example here to show you. This hot off the press, like literally I got this uploaded into Mathspace Live about an hour ago. So this is a very early draft of our MYP1 book. And so we've got the topics of the book, and then this is what we call the subtopics going down like within each chapter. And we try and plan so that each one of these subtopics is a lesson. And so we try and make sure that there's just enough there so that you can come in and do a lesson and that will be enough. So we make sure that there's enough content here, that it's not going to be too short, but also that it's not enough. I mean, not too much. So if there looks like there's going to be more than, 45 minutes to an hour's worth of work, it'll be split over 2 different lessons. So we try and design our books that way so that it's very easy to implement into your teaching and learning scope and sequences that you have at your schools. So that's why there's about 90 per book, and that's just across all books that we do, just to try and have that level of expectation to help with teacher planning. So of course we've got MYP years 1 to 5, the DP, we're looking at 4 books there for AA and AI, both in the standard and high level courses. I won't talk into too much into those pieces because we're going to dig into that in the next few slides. So we're looking at building these IB books specifically for IB, which is different to how we've built other books in the past, which is to take our existing stuff and then make it sort of localized for those particular jurisdictions. IB philosophically actually fits very well with how we try and build all of our content, which is why I think Laila touched on how well aligned our previous version was, because it's a very good blend. So there are a couple of things I'll just touch on here. Certainly, we are being inquiry-led as a big focus. As Erin mentioned before, it's one of the things that we get a lot of feedback on in terms of being able to improve those inquiry sorts of approaches. So, so just checking my notes there. We're going to talk a little bit around how we do the inquiries on each particular level, as well as how we've got broader investigations in each sort of topic. We're going to make sure that, or we have made sure that each of our worksheets map to those criteria A, B, C, and D. I'm going to talk to it in a little bit more depth, but just so you can quickly see what I mean there. The criterias on the worksheets are actually, we've got questions in each criteria in each section. So we've got know and understand, investigate, communicate, and apply maths in real life. So we're doing that across all of the different tiers, and then obviously it builds from MYP1 up to MYP5, and then we take a slightly different approach in the DP courses. The way we want to think about the DP courses is that the practice should also look like the assessment, because we don't think it's fair that students get a shock when they're doing assessments. We want to make sure that there's a really good blend. It's not that we want to teach to the test, it's that we actually think the IB philosophy teaches students to think and be critical thinkers. And so if we can do that really well through our book and through their practice, then they will definitely be ready for their assessment. With the DP, we've got a different type of flavour for the worksheets to prepare them for their paper 1 and 2. In May 25, the IB Examiner reports flagged premature rounding as one of the single biggest causes of lost marks across DP. So the way that we're addressing and making sure that we're building a product from the ground for IB is to take all of those examiner reports and the feedbacks that they've gone and make sure that we build content that addresses that. We want students to have these skills. So for example, with that particular example I shared, we are making sure that we create worksheets that address that rounding from the beginning, and so too will our interactive problems, which are the ones that have the step-by-step help to make sure that they don't round too early. The internationally neutral is, of course, very important. Mathspace prides itself when we do books for specific jurisdictions, how localized and specific they are to those contexts. With an IB context, we obviously need to speak to a global audience. So we're making sure that we've included a lot of diverse names, currencies, measurement units, countries, cities, examples, so that we sort of really bring that in just in a it's almost like a secondary feel, because it's just there in all of the questions and in all of the examples. We also are making sure not to switch and flick too often within each set. So we don't want to go through 6 different currency sets within the one set. We don't want to create too much context switching, but we do make sure over the entire book and through the chapters that we've got a nice global flavour. So our MYP lessons, that's this example that I had up. I had some screenshots because I didn't know I was going to quite get there. So let's just have a little bit of a look about our lessons. So there are there's sort of 2 aspects to the lessons, if you like. One is what the student sees, and this is either digitally or what will soon come in a print book, as well as in our teacher guide or our teacher notes. So for each particular lesson, a student will see a bit of an introduction in terms of why it's relevant in the real world. And then we're going to start with an inquiry. So every section starts with an inquiry. It might be digital, like this will have a GeoGebra applet that they can manipulate. There's some specific questions that they can work through. or it might be static, so it might be more of an open-ended question or a conversation that the teacher can facilitate. And then we move into the theory and worked examples. So we've got some theory, and then each theory section will have a worked example. Excuse me. So the worked examples cover criteria A, C, and D, and then sometimes we do an investigation question in the worked examples as well. The summary, nice little what's the key points and takeaways from that particular section, and then we repeat again. So we've got theory, worked examples, and a summary throughout the lesson. Now this is mirrored on the teacher side. Again for IB, except for there's a little bit extra here that really nails home how important the IB context is. So we've got a global context. It presents a scenario that this teacher can choose to present to open the lesson. So it's like a lesson opener. There's a bit of a scenario. It's going to specifically target what that lesson is about. It talks about why this is important, what sort of questions they might ask, and then it's just sort of meant to be like a 15-minute, this is what we're about to learn. This is why it's important. Let's really think open-ended. This is like a class-focused exploration. You'll see here that we've got the same explore section. This is again hitting that inquiry model. So from here we had this explore section that came with an applet and a series of questions for the students. The teacher is further guided about how to run with that. So there's some particular answers to the questions that are there. There's some purposeful questions in terms of what they might continue to ask to draw out further and deep understanding or facilitate a broader conversation within the students or between groups, and highlights misunderstandings so that you can jump on them at that point of need without sort of needing to think too quickly on your feet. We've got some summaries then about each of the ideas, and then we return to that global context or that context inquiry idea at the end of the lesson with the communicate and reflect. So we get to see we return back to that particular scenario, and then we've got some reflection prompts that we could use in a journal activity or just as an exit ticket to make sure that students have gained that understanding. So that's a little bit of a deep dive into how our lessons have sort of slowly adapted to be really specifically focusing on IB. The teacher supports here, we also have some targeted instructional strategies, English language learner supports, students with disabilities, and further misconceptions, further to the specific ones mentioned later in the lesson. The lessons, our worked examples are actually pretty important. So I touched on them before about how they address the criteria. They don't just show students how to do it. It's not just the apply the idea. It's not just here is the question and here's the answer. It's really how do I choose the approach when that create a strategy? How do I choose how I should do that? So that's that criteria A. The reflect and check also hits some of the examiner tooltips that we talked about before, and also just little things that they can do. Can you substitute back in? That's good math practice to make sure that we think that we've done this correctly. We've also got communicating. So we've got all the steps here about how to communicate their reasoning at each step, and you can have conversations around that as well. Just a couple of other specific examples I was going to draw to, but I don't need to go into too much detail. Laila, I think, mentioned the command terms before. I just wanted to show an example about how that's integrated and levered throughout the product. So we call to attention specifically the evaluate, for example, here, or any sort of command terms or specific terms or glossary terms of definitions in these big grey boxes. And then we flow these terms through, both through the worked examples and then into the worksheet questions themselves. We make sure that each section has these summary boxes, and you saw them in the live product when I had that there before. This one is and then it's got an I can statement at the bottom. So I can build an input-output table by tracing a flowchart for multiple inputs and describe the pattern and see results. So this sits right after the conceptual recap, which is the little bit that appears at the top. That's like what tracing means and how loops work, for example. So the students have finished learning the idea. We give them the summary about that idea, and then we invite them to check themselves against that clear, plain English I can statement. So that connects to the ATL self-management skills. So, you know, am I ready to move on? Should I go back and reflect some more? Perseverance and reflection and those sorts of things get wrapped up in there as well. So can I actually do this? If not, which part is shaky? Where should I go? Do I need to seek further help? Those sorts of things. So the worksheet I touched on before, I showed you the example in the book about how we group them by the criteria. So we've got these particular sections. So group A, no one understands. That's like that pure computation and recall. And group B, I'll touch on in a little bit more depth because this is a new group in this new IB product. So this is, like I said, the really big update. So it's not just one connected investigation. There's 3 to 4 short investigations per worksheet. Each of them are driven by a different investigative move from a 9-move taxonomy. So if you think about pattern to generalize, classify and sort, constructing examples, an open middle or a what if, working backwards, spotting the error. That's a really good one. Encourages self-reflection as well. Counterexample, boundary cases. So no 2 investigations will repeat any of those taxonomies. And we make sure that over the course of any 3 subtopics, all 9 are covered. So each of them is bounded to 3 to 4 parts. They should be completable in between 5 and 10 minutes. And they ramp up to be like quite open. So quick finishes will meet harder thinking and not more repetition. So it's really about exposing students to a wide range of types of investigations through all the tiers. The communicate, obviously, so fluency and justified comparison. They compare equivalent values across forms, order mixed representations, convert between different formats. Uses all the IB command terms, explain, justify, represent, those sorts of things. And then the last section is the apply in real life. So authentic modeling with intentionally diverse and internationally diverse data. They should be able to extract relevant information. They should be choosing strategies here. That's really important. Then calculate and evaluate their accuracy. So within each group, we've got the 4 tiers from like 1, 2, right through to 7, 8. And we make sure that by the time we get to NYP 5, we've got more of the 5, 6, 7, 8. So of course it builds and scaffolds over the years. I can touch on that. These are the chapter reviews. So at the end of each chapter, there's a chapter review set of questions. These are leveled. So the key difference here is that each of those worksheets throughout the chapter build fluency in one subtopic at a time. Students know when they're doing that worksheet what skill is being assessed because the whole worksheet is about that skill. So we've all seen that as teachers where, you know, you're practicing the rule for the area of a parallelogram and then they just do that repeatedly. And then if you all of a sudden give them a rectangle in the middle of that lesson, that's going to be the same rule, but say a trapezium, then they're just going to use the rule that they've been doing for the last 10 questions. So they get into that habit of just doing the same thing over and over and over. To counteract that, we want to make sure that we have a mixed review where they then have to choose. It's really important that they're choosing. Chapter views work this way. This the other way around to the worksheet. So they see a problem, they have to identify which technique applies, combine ideas from multiple subtopics. So it's the same mathematical content, but in this one they have to choose. And we've got that structured. At the moment, we're structuring it by levels. As I said, this is a really early draft. If you've got feedback on whether you think that's a great idea for the review section, you can let me know. That one's still in research. So it's not harder by the numbers necessarily, it's harder by the levels. So, and the types of thinking that goes into it. So it's a bit like the worksheets where we just don't want them doing harder routine questions. We want them to start thinking more complexly. So that's sort of what we want to do, add complexity to the thinking. This was just a specific example of a band 7-8 criteria B question. So I just talked about how we make sure that we've got those tiers set out. So even though in the worksheets, so I'll show you the worksheet. Even though in the worksheets, you don't necessarily see the tiers are there and they're being scaffolded. You see the tiers and the levels more so in the review. But they're all there. And so, for example, this one is the question 7 on the left, we've taken to be like a band 7-8, and this is in that investigation criteria. So that actual criterion from IB says students should discover correct patterns, describe them as relationships, and verify them for other examples. So this is how we've sort of constructed this particular question. So in part A, they're doing that discovering the correct patterns. In part B, they're going to describe them as the relationships. And then in part C, they're going to verify them for the other examples. And then in part D, that pushes into that top 7-8 band where they have to justify why that output can always be written in that way. We've got 2 more questions here for questions 8 and 9, which do a similar thing. And you'll see there, we've got that similar sort of flow through that process of investigation. So, can they take it? Can they generalize it? Can they communicate it? So the DP lessons will actually look very much the same. I don't have a DP lesson up yet because we only just imported the MYP book. But the lesson will be the same. The teacher notes will be the same. We're still hitting all of those things in terms of the theory of knowledge connections, international mindedness, and the exam tips are coming into those reflect and checks, like I said, setting students up for really good practice for what is actually just good mathematics, but will prepare them for their final papers. There's 2 things there I'll just mention. The GDC instructions. We're going to have, or what we do for our products at the moment is for each particular lesson, we have links to the provider's resources on the exact types of tools that they need for those particular tools, rather than including and overwhelming the particular print book with all of those instructions. They can just jump on and go and see those instructions if they need. And we've got some exploration seeds for the IA seeds, IA prompts within each of the chapter. So we're sort of planting ideas for original IA investigations, and we're not using the ones that examiners mentioned as being overused. I mean, that swings and roundabouts, right? In a couple of years, they'll say no one ever does them anymore. The worksheet is a little bit different. I don't have an example online, but I've got one in my code bank. So I'm just going to zoom in on that. Okay, so for the structure for the DP worksheets, instead of using those other 4 groups, we're going to use build understanding, develop fluency and reasoning. And the final one is apply, model and explore. So section 1, build understanding. So this is using state, identify, describe, explain. It's that conceptual clarity before we get to procedural work. We hope that this reduces cognitive load and builds confidence. So they'll work through this bit. Then we get to the fluency and reasoning. So that's obviously what it's going to do there, develop the fluency. That's sort of the heart of the doing section of the worksheets. Find, solve, show that, justify. We make sure that each worksheet has included at least one show that and one justify question. They might be part of the parts, not as well. And like I said, that's where most of the work would be done. And then the apply, model and explore at the end. So that's model, interpret, maybe some more evaluation there. At least one real world context with interpretation of results. We hope that this mirrors problem solving and IA style modeling tasks in a more condensed way. So like I said at the beginning, practice sort of should look like assessment so that there's no surprise at the end. And in fact, if you're in a system like IB where the assessment is pretty, it just sort of follows good mathematical practice and ideas, then the way that we develop our students as mathematicians heading toward those exams That's what we want. So we want to make sure that we're encouraging and developing really good habits, because that will be rewarded for the students later. Have I got anything else here for DP? Give me 1 second. Oh, that's just an example of the lesson. It's the same process if you saw before. So we still hit the explore. We've got a couple of the ideas. And then I think this is a teacher notes. Yeah, it still goes through the same thing. A global context, an idea for the teacher to begin with, goes through the lesson, and then come back with the communicate and reflect to wrap up that global idea. I've touched on some of these as we've gone through this already. So the teacher resources, the teacher notes, that's what you've just been seeing about how it mirrors the actual lesson. So it's really easy for a teacher to know where the students are at, what they're seeing, what the point is, what are the guiding questions I can ask, how can I make sure students aren't picking up misconceptions. The subtopic overview, we like this one because it's kind of like the one-stop shop. It really nails on. I've got an example in the MYP. What is it the students will be able to do? What is the key vocab that they'll pick up in this particular lesson? What are the particular aspects of the MYP standards that they're going to cover? And what is it that it's doing? What's the narrative? What's the idea here? Each lesson also has an essential understanding. And of course, the I can statements, I mentioned those. And the last part of the teacher notes is a topic overview. This is for the same topic that we were just looking at. This one is still in development, but each topic, so this will appear at the very top of the topic page. So each topic has what are the foundational knowledge? What are the skills that they should be coming to this lesson with, so that you can make sure your students are prepared? And some of our maths-based data will definitely help you prepare for that. And then what are the big ideas, and in which lessons are these big ideas covered? So this first idea is covered by the first 3 lessons. The next big idea is the next group, and so on. The topic narrative is really important because it also hits some of the other important IB concepts and gives you a one-stop shop to be able to look up and see where is everything covered. The formatting's not great here yet, but you'll see we're covering what is the global context in this particular chapter, what is the statement of inquiry in this chapter. Here are some inquiry questions that will come up throughout the chapter, the approaches to learning that are taken, and then we've got future connections down the bottom. What comes next? Where does this go to? Why is this what we're covering now important later? And this is just a bit of a summary about how all of those important IB elements are covered throughout our product. Where they're covered, they're explicitly called out wherever there's a tick, and activated just means it shows up in that place and is put into practice. So it's put into practice by the teacher or by the student in those particular places. So it's really important, obviously, that we cover global context repeatedly and that our approaches to learning skills are covered, and the command terms are sort of everywhere where it's naturally used. I think that's all I was going to get into. Maybe I can take a moment and see if I can answer any questions.
Sounds good. Just for anyone interested that's currently not using Mathspace, if you're interested in learning more, you can scan that QR code there. I guess the all-important question, Erin, when will the new books be available? That's come up a lot from a few already existing Mathspace users, as well as a few new ones as well.
This is the bit where I fear I promise things too early, but so we've just started the beginning of May. I strongly believe that I will have digital products ready by the end of June. And they'll be early drafts that I certainly think that anyone who wants to be involved in your research pilot can have access to. We'll still work on those books, and then the goal is certainly before the end of the year, have print books to match our IB digital product.
Excellent. And I think, yeah, I think part of this IB research pilot is obviously that ability to provide feedback, particularly for the digital products where we can make changes more easily than obviously once it's printed. So again, encouraging people to join there. In terms of, I guess, the high level books, we're starting, I assume, with the sort of MYP level books and moving upwards, Erin, is that correct?
I've actually got teams that are working on these concurrently. So, yeah, I think I should have all of those 9 books ready digitally by the end of June. Yeah.
Yeah, and was that the HL? Sorry, I missed that in
Yeah.
the first
Yeah.
slide. Yeah,
Yeah. So the 4 books for AA and AI, both standard level and high level. Yeah.
beautiful. So, Anne, you can see that coming soon. In terms of, I guess, assessment preparation with those sort of specific alignment for exam preparation, do we have any features planned specifically for that currently?
Um, so our worksheets are being tailored to make sure that we hit all the parts that the examiners have identified. We want to make sure that if they're practicing stuff that matters, then by the time they get to their exams, they're ready. We do have for other jurisdictions test practice type stuff. That normally follows after the books are done, and we're sort of happy that the product is stable. So I would tentatively say that I would expect that this will do the same because that's just what we do now. So there would be something in terms of either practice exam style questions or sort of more questions, just more test type sort of practice questions that they could do for those courses. But that will happen after the books are finished. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. We always like to know the content is solid and useful first before we move into that exam space as well. There was a question from Catherine, will professional development on how to use Mathspace specifically? I can answer that one. Yes, we tend to do that on an individual school level though, just so we can talk a little bit more about what you want out of the platform and how you want your students to use it, because obviously that can vary a little bit from school to school. Was there any other questions or comments? I know there's a couple of Mathspace users in the audience, so if you'd like to come off mute and add anything, feel free. I will just give it a moment there. Yep, so as I said, if you have a question, pop that in to the Q&A and I can answer it now. So if you are interested in learning more about Mathspace and you're not currently using it, yes, I've included the meeting there to book a time with Zach, who will be able to show you more about the platform there. Ferdinand, I see you have your hand up. Oh, sorry, I have to allow you to talk. There you go. Ferdinand, did you have something you wanted to ask? Oh, no worries. That's okay. Yes, we will share the recording after the session. Generally, it takes us a couple of days just to clip out any bits and get it all ready, but we will upload it and share those with you as well. All right. If there's no other questions, we can wrap it up there. And I really appreciate everyone's time. I know there's a lot of teachers still busy teaching, but I really appreciate that. I'll stay for a couple of minutes after the session if there are any further questions. But thanks for your time, everyone.